The topic of today's webinar is Advanced Google Shopping Strategies to Maximize Profit. This is something on everyone's mind, especially in the current market conditions where funds may not be as readily available and people are in need of products remotely through e-commerce more than ever. So I think this topic is really timely, and we're happy to present to you today. The speakers for this event will be myself, David Waltzman. I'm our Director of Strategic Partnerships at Feedonomics. That essentially entails anywhere that data comes from or goes to from our platform. And my charter is to ease those friction points to make sure that feeds can be used and leveraged in as many places as possible so that the business runs smoothly. Joining me today is Wes Parker, Managing Director at Clicteq. He's done a lot of really neat work in Google Shopping, which is why we're here today. I'm excited to see all the content he has to share with us. Today's agenda, we'll start by building accounts to reduce costs, structuring campaigns to improve traffic, and then how to track your campaigns to make sure you're optimizing that performance. Also a topic maybe some of you are not familiar with, n-gram scripts. This is something that's really neat, and when used correctly can have tremendous impact. And then, most importantly, as you're starting, most importantly, when you start, you need to make sure that your Google Shopping feeds are set up for success. And that's really the core of what we do at Feedonomics. And then we'll go through some best practices as well for optimizing listings specifically on Google Shopping. So with that, I will hand it over to Wes.
Thank you, David. So as part of the presentation, sort of get started off, talk about, I guess, sort of why you should be investing in Google Shopping. I know a lot of you will already be doing so, but as sort of top line, sort of interesting little stats, 76% of retail ad spend goes to Google Shopping, and 85% of all retail clicks on Google go through Google Shopping. And also, it's interesting to see that Google Shopping is now actually starting to sort of take market share away from Google Search. So last year, Merkle did some research which showed ad spend on Google Shopping actually increased by 38%, while ad spend on Google Search dropped 12%. So you can actually see retailers now sort of moving their budget from sort of Google Search to Google Shopping, which it sort of means it's important to sort of start focusing more on your strategies around shopping and getting those really well optimized. We'll now talk about sort of why the sort of shopping structure matters. I mean, there's sort of two main reasons why shopping structure matters. First of all, it sort of influences how you bid. So a lot of bidding strategies are set at campaign level. So you want to sort of think about how you're going to sort of structure your products into campaigns. And also it'll affect where your adverts appear. So you'll use sort of the structure to set up your negative keywords. So that's another reason why it's quite important. And the sort of better the structure is, the better sort of control you have over where your ads will appear and obviously how you can bid, which will then therefore sort of result in better overall performance. So if you look at one of the sort of first building blocks, actually having a good feed, like sort of David mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the campaign structures that you'll build actually rely on having the feed well optimized. Custom labels are usually a sort of really key aspect of building really good shopping structures. So one thing you might sort of denote in your sort of custom labels is the sort of margin of the product. This is really important if you're bidding towards profitability. So we tend to sort of encourage clients to sort of label the individual products in the feed with the margin. And another thing you can do is sort of level of stock if that's really important. Certain clients want to push sort of high stock products if they need to move them, sort of around business goals, I guess, as opposed to profitability, or sort of low stock items just trying to clear out sort of sale clearance, for example. But these are sort of really key things that you can add into your Google feed, which will help you build a better structure. So there's two different ways you can build Google Shopping campaigns. I guess the first one is sort of standard Google Shopping, which a lot of you will be familiar with. And the other one is Smart Shopping, which is a little bit newer and not everyone sort of delved into. And I guess there's in this presentation, we'll be looking at how you can set up both. The sort of key differences between them, which is quite important when it comes to structure, is that Sort of standard shopping allows you to bid. You can bid manually, sort of standard CPC bidding, but also automated bidding at campaign level. And also you can add negative keywords, which gives you a great deal of control over when where your ads will show. Smart shopping is sort of a black box, sort of fully automated system from Google, where you basically just tell Google the margin you want to bid towards at a campaign level, and there's very little else that you can actually affect in the campaigns. It's pretty much done for you, sort of shopping. So let's talk about Google Shopping first, and then we'll sort of come on to smart shopping later, and we'll sort of look at how you can set up the two for maximum profitability. So with standard Google Shopping, there's sort of three key things I think you need to get right to drive profitability. The first one is to use SPAGs, or single product ad groups, which I'll sort of come on to what they are in a second. If you're using manual bidding, you'll want to use query sculpting. And if not, if you're using automated bidding, you'll want to think about how you set up the campaign so they're structured around return on ad spend, and you'll be using return on ad spend based bidding at campaign level. So first of all, when it comes to SPAGs, what is a SPAG? So a SPAG is a single product ad group, and this is what it looks like here. So you have the sort of campaign at the top here, which will contain, for example, all the women's dresses products if you're a fashion retailer, for example. And each product will have its own ad group. So you can sort of see here there's an ad group for size 10 blue evening dresses, and an ad group for size 12 red dress. And within those ad groups is just one single product. And the benefit of doing this is this. First of all, each product's got its own CPC bid, which means you can bid at product level, which is really important because obviously different products will have different margins. If you're selling, for example, a toaster, you might have a £2 margin or $2 margin in the States. Or if you're selling, for example, a refrigerator, you might have several £100 margin. So you'll want to bid differently on each product, and this sort of structure allows you to do it. The second thing is you can have your own set of negative keywords. So if your products are showing for items you don't want to, searches you don't want to show for even, you can simply just add a negative keyword at individual product level. And also if you just want to exclude products even really easily, you can just pause individual ad groups. And overall, this gives you more control, and that sort of results in less wastage. And this will work quite effectively, even if you've got sort of several thousand products. Once you get into very large shopping sort of campaigns, you might not necessarily want to over, say, 10,000 products, for example, due to the sort of level of complexity it creates. And also, even the time just to build these campaigns, like it takes a lot of time if you've got a number of products. So you might want to use several products per ad group at that level, and then perhaps take out your top performers into this sort of structure. But yeah, it generally works quite well, even if you've got a lot of products. The next thing is sort of query sculpting. So in Google Shopping, you bid on individual products as opposed to search queries, which is quite strange. So in Google Search, you might say, for example, your keyword is Adidas Swift running shoes. You'd set a CPC bid, and obviously that's different to running shoes. If you're selling this specific product, the chance of someone having typed in the name of the product is quite high compared to if they've just typed in running shoes, for example. And in Google Shopping, you actually want to reflect that in your bids if you're using manual bidding. So say, for example, here you've got this product, which is an Adidas Swift running shoe. If someone types in Adidas Swift running shoe, that's a really high intent term. People are quite likely to convert. So you want to bid quite highly. So you want to bid at, say, 80 pence. Say, for example, you've got a product brand search. So this is Adidas running shoes, obviously Adidas being the sort of brand bit there. There's a reasonable chance someone might buy, but not as high a chance as they're looking for that individual product. So your conversion rate will be lower, and therefore you want your bid to be lower. And finally, if you've got a generic term like running shoes, the chance of people buying this individual one's quite low. They're probably just researching at this phrase. So what you want to do there is bid quite low to reflect the conversion rate is going to be quite low. And this is sort of how you do that in sort of practical terms. It's sort of based on the way you set up your campaigns. So you'll have a campaign with the products in, you'll then duplicate them 3 times and use this structure. So you'll have a product terms campaign, which is sort of set to low priority. There's no negative keywords, and your bids will be quite high. These are going to be, sort of targeting those specific terms around the individual products in that campaign. You're then going to have a brand terms campaign, which is going to be trying to pick up the sort of mid-level ones where you've got, say, Adidas running shoes as opposed to Adidas Swift running shoes. This will be sort of set to medium priority. Your bids will be sort of medium, and you'll actually use negative keywords to exclude the specific product terms from these campaigns. And then finally, you've got the generic terms campaign, which is sort of a sweep all sort of campaign, which will pick up the generic terms. So these are terms that don't have the brand name, and don't have the name of the product in them. And here you should set the priority to high, obviously have the negative keywords, and then set your bids to low, and that's just going to pick up the everything else that's generic, basically. And this is specifically for if you're using manual bidding. You won't necessarily need to do this if you're using automated bidding, because Google does this for you to an extent. And then finally, looking at sort of bidding towards profit and how you should set up your campaigns. So generally speaking, if you're using automated bid strategies, for example, sort of target ROAS or target maximize revenue, these are set at campaign level. So you actually want to generally sort of theme your campaigns around the margin of the product as opposed to the category, for example. So say, for example, you want to spend 20% of the product's cost on marketing. You sort of say you want a ROAS of 500% to get that back. So what you'd do is you'd label the ROAS that you're happy with, and then basically you'd put these campaigns into buckets. So you'd have a campaign for, say, ones you're willing to spend 200% as return on ad spend, so like 50% of the cost going on marketing. Then perhaps a campaign 2 with 300% return on ad spend. So these ones you're willing to spend a bit more. And basically, I suggest sort of structuring your campaigns in that sort of structure. So using the SPAGs, structure to get your negative keywords in place, and then using this sort of automated bidding, and then sort of structuring the campaigns based on the margin. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is smart shopping. So obviously this is sort of fully automated black box type of strategy. And in terms of sort of smart shopping, I know a lot of people probably know what smart shopping is, but a lot of people don't know how to test it properly. So a lot of people would be running the old sort of standard shopping campaigns, and sort of smart shopping was introduced by Google, and people would basically sort of test it straight away, and then they'd usually just test their old shopping campaign versus the new smart shopping campaign, and that's not necessarily the best way to do it, because smart shopping doesn't only include Google Shopping, it also includes products on the display network, and YouTube too. So there's actually other channels. So to actually test it properly, which I really suggest you do, is to actually test your smart shopping campaigns against your standard shopping, standard display remarketing with dynamic ads, and YouTube remarketing activity too, and then actually compare those 3 campaigns against your new smart shopping campaign. And a lot of the times you'll actually find that the standard shopping does outperform smart shopping, but it's certainly worth giving it a test. And to do this, there's a couple of scripts I'd recommend. There's a script which allows you to split traffic by label, which is on search engine land, and also an A/B test script that allows you to sort of split test based on label. So label your smart shopping campaign with smart shopping, and then label your standard shopping campaign with just shopping, and also your YouTube and display campaigns. Then you're just going to split the traffic evenly between the two, and then use the sort of script to work out when you hit statistical significance. And in terms of sort of structuring smart shopping, it's quite straightforward. So a lot of the time you'll just sort of use target ROAS and target max revenue. So the structures are very similar to sort of standard shopping ones when you use automated bidding. So basically build campaigns around the different target ROAS that you're willing to pay based on the margin of the product. It's not really necessary to group them by product here because there's no negative keywords. So with standard shopping, you might want to group dresses, for example, because they'll have similar negative keywords between all the different products. But with smart shopping, there's no negative keywords, so it's not really necessary. So yeah, we suggest that you build it around the margins. But you could also build like top performance campaigns as well, for example. But this is the best way to optimize towards profitability. And sort of a bit of a sort of fun bonus bit of content, which I think something people don't necessarily use very often. It's called n-gram analysis, which is part of natural language processing. And that basically works like this. So say, for example, you have a shopping campaign, and you have search terms. So this is what people search for if you're using standard shopping. And here's an example of a few search terms. So we've got men's blue socks size 7, red socks size 7, men's blue striped socks. And you can sort of see the respective number of sales and cost next to them. And what n-gram allows you to do is take individual terms and aggregate the data from them. So say, for example, 1 n-gram is blue, and then that will actually total up all the data for the search terms that included the word blue. And this actually allows you to spot really large trends in large volumes of data that you can't necessarily see just by looking at the campaigns or looking through the search term reports. And it's actually been incredibly effective. We had a client in the UK that sells alloy wheels, which people tend to buy aftermarket alloy wheels in the UK to sort of spruce their cars up a little bit and make them look cooler. And we noticed there that when people typed in alloy wheels, the CPA was quite reasonable. It was around £50. But when they used the word rims instead of alloy wheels, which is sort of a another term that people search for, looking for alloy wheels, the CPA was around £500, which obviously is 10 times higher, not very effective at all. So we were able to sort of spot that just by doing this. And I think you'll be surprised once you run this how many sort of unprofitable terms that are running through your campaigns that you haven't excluded yet. You just aren't able to sort of see in a standard search term report. And here's an example of sort of what a report would look like. And the way to do this is to use an n-gram script. So if you're familiar with Google Ads scripts, you can basically type into Google, it's AdWords script, find your best and worst search queries using n-grams, and it's on search engine land. And you can basically just copy and paste the script into your account, run it on the shopping campaigns, and then look at sort of 2 to 3 word terms in here. And you'll probably find some quite high CPA ones that are not doing very well that you can exclude straight away that you might have not spotted before. And also you'll probably find ones that have spent a lot of money but haven't converted, and they're also sort of really good candidates to be excluded. And it doesn't just work in shopping as well. If you want to run this in your standard sort of search campaigns, you can do that too. And it works the same there. But yeah, a really useful piece of technology. And also another thing you can do is actually use it to optimize your product titles in your feed. So this is a bit of a plug for Feedonomics, but if you include the search term, the sort of term that you want to appear for in your product title, you're 17% more likely to show for that term. So it makes a big difference. And that was sort of data from Clicteq. So what you can do is you can actually use n-gram analysis to look at the search queries that your products have been appearing for. And I'm pretty sure Feedonomics actually allows you to do this sort of automatically, and then include those high performance terms in your product titles, and you'll show for them more. And that's a really easy way to really improve your performance and make your product titles really well optimized. And yeah, that's it for my sort of section. I'll be sort of handing back over to David, who will talk a bit more about the sort of feed optimization side and how that can support your Google Shopping campaigns.
Excellent. Thank you, Wes. That was super insightful. I love that you talked about n-gram, because that's definitely something we do with our enterprise clients. Our capability is called Feedtelligence. But if you're not doing it already, definitely reach out to your account manager, see if you're able to get that going. We see a lot of improvements where, you may think that you're selling shoes and basketball shoes is what people are searching, but maybe they're typing Keds instead. And Keds would also be less expensive to buy and result in more conversion. So it's a win-win. So some really neat case studies around there, and would love to talk to you about it. So how can Feedonomics help with all of this? And so Feedonomics, if you're not familiar, is able to plug into pretty much any e-commerce platform out there, bring in that data, and send it to a destination like Google Shopping. So if you're on one of the platforms mentioned here, we might be able to pull in your data through API, or maybe there's an FTP solution or a cartridge. If none of these things apply, then we're also able to crawl websites as well. Regardless, we're going to read that data into Feedonomics, and then use all of our best practices for Google Shopping as a base case to optimize your data for any destination you choose. We use Google Shopping as the foundation for any feed, because it's fairly dominant in structure as far as the industry goes for obvious reasons. And there's a lot of, I guess, just inherent good practices that they expect. So from an advanced functionality perspective, one of the real good value adds we're able to provide is what we call a Google SKU shopping report. So in order to get the data that you see here on the right, we need to be able to connect to GA or Google Ads with our API connection. So that's not on by default. It's not required to run Feedonomics. Connecting to Google Analytics is something required for the n-gram analysis that Wes mentioned. So there's really no harm in doing it. We just need to make sure that we can check that box. And then creating custom labels, as Wes mentioned, can be extremely valuable in structuring your campaigns, but it can also really be helpful with this reporting capability. And so what we aim to do is get some insights on top products. Depending on the type of business you have, how many products you have, the margin of those products, what defines a top product is going to be different. But some common definitions we see, revenue, ROAS, clicks, margin, and so on. The margin one's interesting. I think a lot of times people don't think about that right away. But if you sell 100 products and 90 of them have a small margin and 10 have big ones, it probably doesn't make sense to spend equally across them. There's more effective things you can do to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck with Google. You also want to make sure that you emphasize unique qualities about your products. So if you sell banana chips, that's great. There might be 10 other people selling banana chips. So what's going to make you different? What are going to be these, quote, power words that elevate your listings? Organic is really hot right now. People are into craft items that are man-made, without hormones, for GMO, vegan products. It's funny, it's not just food anymore, right? Vegan leather might be for a purse, synthetic leather, cruelty-free, all these different social causes right now that are out in media are really powerful for your products as well, even something like a PLA. And so if these are already in your e-commerce data on your PDPs, that's great. If they're not, you can work with our analysts to add a field in your feed to populate these for certain categories or even for specific SKU lists, whatever's going to be the most effective for your assortment. And do you want to use these everywhere? Probably not. You don't want to overdo it, but you definitely want to make sure that your value prop shines through. Also in Google Shopping, it gives you 150 characters for a PLA. A lot of times, before someone has an optimized feed, the titles are fairly succinct, or they're just filled with a lot of nonsensical information. But Google gives you 150 characters. You should use them strategically, but you should still definitely use them. And in Feedonomics, we're able to get a preview of what the PLA will look like, both on desktop and mobile. So if you have any doubts about what it'll look like, our team is happy to support you with graphics there. And of course, having more keyword inclusions is going to give you higher relevancy, which helps you in every way. We do all of this through full service feed management, right? So a lot of the topics you heard today may or may not be in your comfort zone, but luckily we have a team of over 100 Feedonomics feed specialists now on our feed fulfillment team that work on this day in, day out. So if you're one of our standard clients, we'd love to start implementing some of these best practices with you. If the ngram functionality is something that is really wetting your whistle right now, our enterprise service is probably going to be more along the lines of what you'd be looking for in order to have one-on-one attention from an enterprise feed manager, as well as recurring monthly calls and strategy sessions to make sure that you're staying a step ahead of the curve rather than trying to catch up. So for tuning in today, if you're not already a Feedonomics customer, we'd love to run a complimentary feed audit for you. This usually takes about 2 days to turn around, and the benefit here being that we identify all the low-hanging fruit for Google and provide it to you in a report. There's no commitment here. We're not really scared with you, taking the data and running, because you still have to implement it all, and that's what we do really well. So we'd be happy to extend that to anyone that's interested. Also, a note for current clients that have been on for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years with Feedonomics, is that we're still happy to do a feed review. And so instead of more of this templated approach, we're going back in and checking the health. Inevitably, as your assortment changes over time, or the categories that you sell in change over time, there's going to be some chips and cracks. And so we want to make sure that we revisit those and shine it up. So with that, I would like to open it up to questions. So feel free to enter your questions in the GoToWebinar, and Wes and I will be happy to address those as they come in. Okay. All right, so we got one coming in here. For Wes, I think you could take this one. Should I just use smart shopping?
I think with any sort of new feature like smart shopping, it's not sort of brand new anymore, but I think any sort of new feature that you're sort of bringing into your account, you should definitely sort of test it. And a lot of people now are sort of moving towards just doing smart shopping. But I certainly think you should split test smart shopping versus standard shopping plus your YouTube and display activity, just to give it sort of a really fair test.
That's great. Yeah, and when we run into smart shopping as well, I would say a fair amount of our agencies at Feedonomics do smart shopping campaigns, but there's an option, whether or not you want to use a feed with smart shopping, and definitely leveraging the feed in addition to its capabilities will also enhance the performance as well. Let's see, we have another one here. I do not have any power words in my e-commerce attributes. Am I stuck? For now, but all that is until you submit a ticket in feed support. And then our analysts, are working across a couple thousand different clients. So most likely you aren't the only one selling those types of products, and they're already familiar with that vertical and can recommend some of those power words if you're not sure what to use, or if you already have those planned, or maybe they're already in a Google Sheet and you just need to merge them in through a URL. We're able to handle that as well. See, should I still use Spag if I've got thousands of products? Wes, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I guess that's one for me. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can certainly do this up to several thousand products. I think once it gets really large, into sort of tens of thousands of products, it doesn't make sense to do it anymore. We've sort of done it with 750,000 products before, and it was sort of quite painful. I probably wouldn't suggest doing it with sort of product feed quite that large. So yeah, perhaps I'd say maybe 10,000 products would suggest doing Spag, and then perhaps over that, maybe use sort of tightly themed ad groups with products that are closely themed together.
Excellent, thank you. So we have another one here. Thanks for the feed audit. What am I supposed to do with that information? So the information doesn't have any strings attached to it. You don't have to give us your credit card to get a feed audit. Like I said, it turns out in a couple days. We give you the information. And being fully candid, it's a fantastic sales tool because it illustrates what you don't know. And our team is able to, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, once you onboard, get all of that patched up and production ready. So you have another one here. Should I use manual bidding for shopping as opposed to automated bidding?
Guess that's probably one for me. So I think with sort of automated versus sort of standard bidding, I think it's a lot of it's also CPC bidding. A lot of it's due to the sort of volume of conversions you have. If you have a high volume of conversions, automated bidding generally works a lot better. If you've got quite low volumes of conversion, sort of manual bidding is usually a better way to go about optimizing your campaign. So using the sort of query sculpting too. But yeah, that answers the question.
Excellent. And let's see, I'm looking to do, I'm looking in the GMC, but not seeing the Google SKU shopping report. Where is it? So it's not in the GMC. This is a report that Feedonomics creates. We would be tying into data, as I mentioned earlier, from Google Analytics, as well as Google Ads, and then creating that report on our side and in the format of a Google Sheet, most likely, and then sharing that with you. So, so not in the GMC as a standard, but we create it. So I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment? Oh, here we go. Doesn't using SPAGs limit the statistical relevance of any data you might get?
Oh, I sort of see what you mean there. So with Spag, you've sometimes got to basically aggregate data. The main reason for using Spag is so that you can sort of target your negative keywords and you're bidding more effectively. But it does to an extent. So you'll have to sort of collate data again the same way you would do if you had like multiple products per ad group. Hope that answers the question.
Perfect. And let's see, here's another one. Are there any Google stats on the percent of shopping campaigns using standard versus smart shopping? It generally feels like smart shopping is the bigger push from the Google side.
It's definitely more pushed by Google. I don't actually know the sort of thing. I don't think I've ever been told by anyone at Google the actual figures as a percentage, but I get the feeling now that yeah, smart shopping's definitely been pushed a lot harder by Google. I don't know what percentage of people use it, but I'd imagine it's probably now more dominant than standard shopping.
And is another one for you, Wes. We got a stream of them in now, so buckle up. Is this n-gram negatives visible for smart shopping since you can't see search terms for smart shopping?
No, so you can't do it with smart shopping. You can only do it with standard shopping. It's one of the sort of downsides of sort of smart shopping. It's really black box. Like there's no negatives at all. Like, there's very little control. Whereas with standard shopping, you can you can of course see the search terms and you can use the n-gram stuff as well.
Excellent. Let's see, another question here. I think I can take this one. Feedonomics can only be used to get data from the platforms you mentioned, right? Not Amazon or eBay. So Amazon or eBay would typically be a destination. So at Feedonomics, today we primarily talked about Google Shopping. We support a variety of different destination types. So they could be CSEs, they could be affiliate networks, they could be social media channels, could be personalization technologies, or I'd say the second most common is marketplaces like Amazon or eBay. We support Walmart, Facebook Marketplace, Target Plus, all the major ones you could think of in the States. We're also adding a lot more of them internationally. I think now we have over 100, which is fantastic. This is the year of the marketplace. So if those are of interest, definitely reach out to your account manager, or if you're not currently a Feedonomics client, reach out on the website or email hello@feedonomics.com. See, we have another one here. This one's for you, Wes. Is there any benefit to having multiple ad groups within a smart shopping campaign?
I guess it depends how you want to segment your campaigns out. Maybe if you're trying to pull specific stuff, maybe. Most people don't typically do that now, but I don't necessarily see much benefit to it unless you've got like a specific reason you want to do it or need to do it for like business reason.
Okay, another one for you. What are you seeing as average ROAS across industries for Google Shopping campaigns?
Oh, that's a good question. It varies so much. So you can see like really competitive stuff. Cosmetics is usually quite low ROAS, generally speaking. It also depends what type of cosmetics it is. That could be maybe like one to two. So you've got like maybe 200% ROAS. So for every pound you spend, you get two back. Then sort of like high-end products, like high-end fashion or high-end cosmetics, for example, you can see it as high as like 1 to 15, 1 to 20. So I'd say it's very hard to generalize. I think higher ticket, more niche products tend to generally have a higher ROAS. Quite mainstream competitive stuff generally has a lower ROAS, but it'd be very difficult to sort of generalize across campaigns. I mean, you see, results vary so much from industry to industry, and based on people's offerings as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's no typically we see answer to that one. Okay, another one here. Why query sculpt based on products, brand, or generic instead of other differences in query ROAS?
So the reason I picked those is it's quite a good example to. So obviously, I think most people know brand terms perform a lot better than like generic terms, for example. So it's a good example of. I mean, theoretically, you can do it any sort of way you want. I think that's a good way of doing it because brand terms generally perform really well. Product-specific terms probably perform the best. Obviously, it's brand plus product, and then generic terms generally perform the worst. I think it's quite a sensible way of doing it. But I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do it in a different way if you knew that certain types of like words, for example, perform better than others. But I think that's sort of quite a simple, logical way to do it.
Okay. Let's see. Do you recommend utilizing a supplemental feed in GMC for margin data, or rather use a single feed and address margin via campaign structure? I can take this one. So we want to do whatever is best for you. In Feedonomics, we can join, an unlimited amount of data sources together. So if you have a Google Shopping performance, feed being joined in a supplemental, could be price lists for other countries, could be margin data, could be even weather data. Really anything that you could put in the table with a unique identifier, we can join into your feed. So if you want to use that for the creation of custom labels, I would say read it into Feedonomics. Okay, another one for you, Wes. Doesn't using SPAGs limit the statistical relevance of any data you get in the resulting small ad groups?
Oh, I think we already did that one.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Let's see, any benefit of having multiple ad groups in a smart shopping campaign? That one too?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, there's a lot of them here. I think we have a lot of duplicate questions. Okay, are there any Google stats on percent of shopping campaigns using standard versus smart? It generally feels like, oh, we did that one. People had a lot of similar questions, which is good, you're listening. Let's see, just want to make sure we got them all before we close out. Let's see, I think maybe the last one here would be, can you address info on surfaces? How does it differ and what are long-term roadmap? So I'm not quite sure what that means. Does that have any significance to you, Wes?
Yeah, I guess it's the new sort of really quite new stuff from Google about it would be the free shopping stuff, which is sort of brand new. In terms of sort of info for that, I don't know exactly. Is there anything sort of specific they're interested in? I guess there's quite a lot of information from
So
Google at the moment. It's sort of brand new, pretty new for
yeah,
Google.
so there's another clarification with regards to free shopping listings.
Yeah, so basically Google's bringing out sort of some free shopping listings too. I'm not sure if they've actually released how it's going to fully work yet. I saw the first release that they brought out a few weeks back now about the sort of press release they put out about announcing it. But yeah, basically you'll be able to use sort of surfaces by Google, which is yeah basically some free shopping listings in Google's results, which would be I think quite nice for some retailers now. I know a lot of, sort of brick and mortar retailers are really struggling, so it would be essentially a nice little sort of freemium benefit from Google.
Yeah, and there's further clarification saying it's released, but wondering if optimization is different for product data. So what I would say is that I believe it was back in April when the first announcement happened, and that was around not on the Google page, but on the shopping tab. So not on the search page, but the shopping tab. And I believe the statistic is somewhere around 12% of folks click on that shopping tab to look for products. So it really wasn't as front and center, but it was a great concession by Google to help out small businesses during COVID. So definitely still applaudable. Um, and then just recently, they said, okay, also on the main Google search page, there's also going to be free PLAs. And so I think it's a double-edged sword, right? It'll definitely get more competition on there. It could possibly increase bidding depending on the quality of your data and relevancy. But it could also, I don't know, the jury's out on performance, right? We don't know how Google's algorithm is, if it's a fair fight for everyone or if some will be preferred over others. So So it'll be interesting, definitely, to see where that goes and how other ad platforms respond. Let's see, we got one question that is bumped. So I see someone just tried to bump their question, but I don't see their original question. Would you be able to type it again? We really appreciate all these questions. It's awesome to see the level of engagement here. Okay, I found it. All right. Do you recommend utilizing a supplemental feed in GMC for margin data? Oh, we already spoke about this one. Sorry,
We've got a few questions today.
I don't want to call you out by name, but we already answered the questions. The answer was if you want to use margin data to create custom labels, then it definitely makes sense to load it into Feedonomics. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I think that puts a wrap on today. It was a pleasure talking to all of you and sharing the latest and greatest with advanced techniques for Google Shopping. Thank you, Wes, for joining in, and
Thanks, Sam.
hope to see you all soon.